Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today we're examining one of the strangest cases in modern true crime. A man who seemed convinced he was in danger, crossed borders to escape, and was later found dead under circumstances that still don't fully make sense.
Yeah. And I have to say, out of all the cases we explored, this one has always just fundamentally unsettled me.
Oh, completely. It's that contagious nature of fear, right?
Exactly.
Like when someone looks you in the eye and says, someone is trying to kill me, it hooks you. You instantly feel that panic.
Right. Because biologically, we're wired to respond to that.
Yeah, but when there's no face to the threat, when the person running won't, or maybe can't, name the person chasing them, it stops being a standard threat and just morphs into this profound kind of unsettling phantom.
It really does. And, from an analytical perspective, it creates this tragic puzzle. Usually when we look at victimology, the victim's behavior right before a crime gives us a map.
Like a map straight to the killer.
Exactly. We trace their phone calls, their financial transactions, their routine. It points us in a logical direction.
But not here.
No, not at all. The map Blair Adams left behind, it looks like a labyrinth, and it's one that feels almost deliberately constructed to confuse everyone looking at it.
Right. It's just this sequence of extreme erratic movements across literally multiple countries and states.
Defying all conventional logic.
Yeah, so for those of you listening, I want you to really try and put yourself in that suffocating headspace today. Just imagine feeling so hunted that you empty your entire life savings, bounce off international borders, abandon cars, and fly across the continent in a blind panic.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. And then to have that exact invisible fear you've been running from just materialize in a random dark parking lot in a city where you know absolutely no one.
Which brings us to the core tension we're analyzing today.
Yes, the big question.
Was Blair Adams running from a highly capable flesh and blood pursuer, someone who somehow managed to track his chaotic path across North America?
Or was he fleeing a psychological phantom? Like a manifestation of a severe mental break, only to tragically cross paths with real-world random violence.
To even begin to untangle that, we have to look at the bizarre nature of how Blair was found. But to understand that, we first need to walk through the pinball trajectory of his final days.
Yeah, because this wasn't a slow decline.
Yeah.
This was an explosion. So let's establish the baseline. Who was Robert Dennis Blair Adams before the summer of 1996?
Well, he went by Blair, and he was a 31-year-old construction foreman living in Surrey, British Columbia.
Okay.
And universally, he was described by friends, family, his coworkers as just a reliable, optimistic, generally cheerful guy.
Just a normal, dependable guy?
Yeah. He worked for a construction company that was actually owned by his stepfather, and it was a good job. It had him traveling overseas to Germany for major projects.
Which becomes relevant later.
Very relevant. Now, it is critical context to mention that he did have a history of drug and alcohol abuse.
Right.
And that had led to some minor legal trouble in his past.
But he had turned it around, right?
He had. His family was absolutely adamant that he had been completely sober for 2 years prior to these events.
And, 2 years of sobriety is a massive achievement. But it also requires constant maintenance.
It's an everyday battle.
Exactly. And right before things went off the rails, he stopped attending his support group meetings.
Which is such a huge red flag.
Yeah. Looking at the psychology of recovery, pulling away from your support network is like often the very first visible symptom of increasing internal pressure.
Precisely. Cessation of support group attendance, it doesn't definitively mean someone relapsed, but it absolutely indicates vulnerability.
They're losing their anchor.
Right. When an individual in recovery stops anchoring themselves to their community, they become highly susceptible to stress. And in early July, the internal pressure Blair was facing suddenly became very external.
This is where the shift happens.
Yes. He began telling his mother and his friends that someone was spreading malicious rumors about him.
Rumors about what? Did he say?
He was vague. But shortly after that, the narrative escalated dramatically. He claimed someone was actively trying to kill him.
And this is where it takes a really chilling turn for me. Because when people asked him the most obvious question, who is trying to kill you?
He didn't say, I don't know.
Exactly. He didn't say he didn't know. He said, I don't think I should tell you about it.
which completely shifts how we have to look at his psychological state.
Right, because that phrasing implies he knows exactly who it is.
It implies a specific identified threat. It suggests Blair believed that sharing the name would either endanger the people he loved or maybe accelerate the timeline of his own murder.
Or, alternatively, it points to a level of profound paranoia, right?
Yeah, a state where he no longer trusts his own inner circle.
Like he thinks his friends and family are compromised or in on it somehow.
Exactly. And his actions over the next few days certainly match the profile of a man who believed a hit was imminent.
The panic sets in.
Full panic. On July 5th, he abruptly quits his stable job.
Just walks away.
Just walks away. Then he goes to his bank, drains his accounts, and empties his safe deposit box.
And we aren't just talking about, pulling out a few weeks of rent money.
No, he pulls together nearly $6,000 in cash, plus platinum, jewelry, and 5 troy ounces of gold bars.
Gold bars. Who even has gold bars?
Well, the choice of physical assets there is incredibly telling. Liquidating your life into precious metals in 1996 is a highly deliberate maneuver.
It's high stakes.
Very. Why not traveler's checks? Why not a cashier's check?
Because you can track those.
Right. Cash is obvious for someone on the run, but platinum and gold bars, that represents a desire for untraceable, universally accepted, off-the-grid currency.
It's doomsday prep behavior.
Exactly. And 5 troy ounces of gold is dense. It's physically heavy. Carrying that on your person, it literally grounds you in your own paranoia.
The constant physical reminder that you're running.
Yes, it tells us he believed he was never coming back, and that traditional banking systems were either monitoring him or would soon be totally useless to him.
So he makes his pockets incredibly heavy, and he makes his first desperate attempt to flee. He heads to Victoria, British Columbia to catch a ferry across the border to Seattle.
But he hits a wall at immigration.
Right. And you have to remember the mechanics of border control back then, for you listening.
Or
Pre-9/11, border crossings between the U.S. and Canada were, generally a lot less restricted than today.
yeah, you often didn't even need a passport, just a driver's license.
Right, but immigration officials were still highly trained to profile for drug trafficking.
And imagine their perspective that day. A single 31-year-old male approaches the checkpoint.
Sweating
Profusely, shifting his weight, avoiding eye contact, acting highly, highly agitated.
So they pull him aside.
They do. They search his bags and find an enormous quantity of cash, platinum, and gold bars.
Which looks exactly like drug money.
They immediately profile him as a courier moving illicit funds. They run his background, see the past convictions for drugs and assault, and they formally deny him entry into the United States.
So he bounces off the border. But his desperation is just accelerating at this point.
He can't go back to his life.
No, he feels he can't. So on July 9th, in the early morning hours, Canadian Border Patrol officers intercept him again. This time, he's trying to cross the border on foot at the Pacific Highway border crossing.
And the physical toll of this attempt really highlights his sheer panic.
What do they find?
When Border Patrol finds him, he's covered in scratches. His hands, his arms, his legs.
Because he was just tearing through the woods?
Yeah, he had been physically fighting his way through dense, dark brush and rough terrain in the wilderness.
That is terrifying, just running through the dark alone.
It is. And nearby, authorities locate an abandoned, stolen vehicle, and Blair fits the physical description of the suspect who dumped it.
But he denies it, right?
He vehemently denies stealing the car. And because the authorities lack hard forensic evidence tying him to the steering wheel, they are forced to release him.
Okay, so he's been rejected at a commercial ferry port. He has failed a physical, brutal trek through the wilderness, but he is entirely relentless.
He won't stop.
Later that exact same day, July 9th, he successfully rents a Nissan Altima from the Vancouver International Airport.
Finally.
Yeah, he finally manages to drive across the border and makes it down to Seattle. And, this is the moment where his itinerary just shatters into complete, inexplicable chaos.
It really does. If we attempt to trace his intent from the moment he reaches Seattle, all conventional logic just collapses.
None of it makes sense.
He has a rented Nissan Altima. That is a perfectly good vehicle for a cross-country escape.
Right, you can drive anywhere in that.
But instead, he abandons the car. He leaves it, goes to the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and purchases a round-trip ticket to Frankfurt, Germany.
Now, Frankfurt isn't totally random, right? I mean, he had worked there. He had an ex-girlfriend there.
Yes, there is a superficial logic to Germany, but law enforcement later interviewed that former girlfriend, and she confirmed they had not been in communication at all.
So she wasn't expecting him.
Not at all. She had no idea he was planning a trip. But honestly, the destination quickly becomes irrelevant.
Because he never gets on the plane.
Exactly. He buys a round-trip international ticket, holds it, and then abruptly changes his mind. He goes back to the ticketing counter and trades the Frankfurt flight for a one-way domestic ticket to Washington, D.C.
I really want to pause on this for you listening, because this is where we see a psychological phenomenon known as cognitive tunneling.
Yes, cognitive tunneling.
Right. When your brain is under severe, life-threatening stress, your amygdala essentially hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
The part of the brain responsible for long-term planning and logical reasoning?
Exactly. Your peripheral awareness just collapses. You can only focus on the immediate perceived threat. So swapping a flight to Europe for a flight to the U.S. Capitol, it isn't a rational pivot.
It's the geographic equivalent of a rat trapped in a maze.
Yes. Just desperately looking for any open door.
That is an excellent framework for his behavior. So he arrives at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C., early on the morning of July 10th. He immediately rents a white Toyota Camry.
A completely different car.
Right. He gets behind the wheel and begins driving southwest. Later that morning, he gets into a minor traffic collision in Troy, Virginia.
Just a fender bender?
Yeah, he backed the Camry into another driver's car.
And the other driver's statement to the police adds this bizarre layer of normality to the timeline.
What do they say?
The driver reported that Blair, quote, seemed nice but was in a hurry.
In a hurry? That's an understatement.
It's such a mundane interaction.
Uh-huh.
But underneath that polite exterior, the engine of his terror is still revving at maximum capacity.
The direction of his travel is just as baffling. He continues driving approximately 500 miles southwest from Virginia, deep into Knoxville, Tennessee.
Knoxville? Did he know anyone there?
According to extensive investigations by multiple agencies, Blair Adams had absolutely zero connections to Knoxville.
No friends, no family.
No business associates, no history in the state whatsoever. He simply drove until he ended up at the intersection of Interstate 81 and Interstate 40.
Which brings us back to the moment I mentioned at the very beginning of our exploration today. It is 5:30 p.m. on July 10th.
He's made it to Tennessee.
He pulls the rented Toyota into a BP gas station off Strawberry Plains Pike. And he approaches Gerald Sapp. Sapp is a driver for an interstate repair service who just happened to be at the station.
Okay.
And Blair claims he is locked out of his car because the key won't work.
And this is where the cognitive tunneling you mentioned earlier reaches a truly devastating peak.
Oh, it's wild.
Sapp looks at the key Blair is frantically trying to use. It is the key to the Nissan Altima.
The car he left in Seattle.
The car he rented in Vancouver and abandoned at the Seattle airport 2 days ago. Blair is standing in Tennessee, looking at a Toyota, holding a Nissan key from Washington State.
And his brain simply cannot process the discrepancy.
It can't. Sapp tries to inject basic reality into the situation.
He tells him, logically, like, buddy, if you drove this Toyota up to this gas pump, you have to have the Toyota key somewhere in your pockets.
But Blair refuses to check his pockets.
You just don't do it.
He is stubbornly, inexplicably locked into this altered reality where the Nissan key must work.
It's so frustrating to even hear about. Why wouldn't he just check?
Because when an individual is experiencing acute paranoia or a severe psychotic break, external logic is frequently perceived as a threat.
Ah, I see.
To check his pockets would be to admit that his internal reality was flawed, and his traumatized brain couldn't allow that.
It would break the illusion keeping him safe.
Exactly. Sapp later told investigators he thought Blair was completely, quote, nuts.
I mean, you can't blame him.
No. Unable to reason with him, Sapp does the only practical thing. He arranges for a local shop to tow the Toyota, and he gives Blair a ride down the street, dropping him off at a Fairfield Inn.
And that Fairfield Inn lobby contains the final confirmed footage of Blair Adams alive.
That's CCTV tape.
It is essentially a silent film of a man entirely consumed by fear. Over the course of roughly 40 minutes, he paces the lobby, he walks out the automatic doors, and comes back in 5 separate times.
The physical manifestation of his internal terror is undeniable on that tape. He's constantly scanning the parking lot, checking over his shoulder.
Extreme hypervigilance.
Extreme. Finally, at 7:37 p.m., he approaches the front desk. He requests a room and hands the clerk a $100 bill. But as the clerk is processing the transaction and making change, Blair turns his back, walks out of the lobby doors, and vanishes into the Knoxville evening.
He leaves his change.
He abandons his $50 in change, and he never sets foot in the room he just purchased.
Leaving that $50 on the counter wasn't just weird, it was a fatal mistake. Because whatever triggered him to walk out those glass doors, it set him on a direct trajectory toward a brutal end.
It did.
There was a terrifying 12-hour black hole in the timeline right here. And the next time we see Blair Adams, it's 7:30 the following morning, July 11th.
Construction workers arriving at a job site for a new country inn and suites, which, by the way, sits directly across the interstate interchange from the Fairfield Inn.
Right.
They make a horrific discovery. In the dirt and gravel of the active construction parking lot, they find Blair's body.
I want to spend significant time analyzing the crime scene, because it is a total paradox. The physical state he was found in contradicts every basic assumption about how and why people are murdered.
It really does.
Let's look at the staging. He is found half naked. His pants have been completely removed. His shoes and his socks are off, and they are placed neatly nearby.
Neatly placed. That's bizarre.
But here is the detail that haunts every investigator who touches this case. His socks have been deliberately turned inside out.
From a behavioral analysis perspective, that specific detail, the inverted socks, is incredibly loud.
What does it tell you?
Well, in a chaotic, brief struggle or like a thrill kill, an offender does not take the time to delicately remove a victim's footwear and manipulate their socks.
They just want to get out of there.
Exactly. That behavior points heavily to a localized, methodical search. It tells us the offender was looking for something highly specific.
Like what?
Something small enough to be concealed against the skin or maybe slipped inside a shoe. Furthermore, Blair's shirt had been violently ripped open, exposing his chest.
So they were looking for something taped to him, maybe?
It's very possible.
And if you're thinking this is a simple mugging, the rest of the scene shatters that theory instantly.
Absolutely shatters it.
Scattered on the dirt surrounding his body is approximately $4,000 in loose currency, a mix of United States, Canadian, and German bills.
It violates the fundamental premise of a financially motivated crime. You don't leave $4,000.
And it wasn't just the scattered bills. Located right next to his body was his fanny pack. When investigators opened it, they found it entirely untouched.
Untouched.
Inside were the 5 troy ounces of gold bars, the platinum coins, and the jewelry.
It's astounding. Whoever murdered Blair Adams stood over a small fortune, performed an invasive search of his clothing, and then walked away, leaving the wealth in the dirt.
It is maddening, and it gets stranger. Just 10 feet away from his body, lying on the ground, investigators find the key to the rented Toyota Camry.
Very key.
The exact same key he was so adamantly convinced he had lost 12 hours earlier at the gas station.
The presence of that key introduces profound questions about the missing 12 hours. Did he finally check his pockets during the night and find it?
Or did his killer discover it during the search and discard it?
We don't know. But the true horror of the scene is found in the pathology of his injuries.
Let's dissect the autopsy findings, because the mechanics of his death rule out a lot of the internet's favorite theories.
Okay.
The medical examiner at the University of Tennessee Medical Center documented numerous cuts and severe abrasions on his hands and arms.
The Knox County Sheriff's Department correctly classified those as defensive wounds. Blair fought his attacker fiercely.
He didn't go down easy.
No, he did not. He also sustained a deep traumatic laceration to his forehead, which forensic analysts determined was likely inflicted by a heavy, blunt instrument.
Like what?
Possibly a club or a crowbar, perhaps something picked up from the construction site itself. A weapon of opportunity.
But the blow to the head wasn't the fatal injury, right?
No. The cause of death was rooted in a single catastrophic blow to his abdomen.
A punch.
Well, the kinetic energy required to inflict the damage he sustained is massive. The human stomach is protected by a wall of abdominal muscle and sits partially shielded beneath the rib cage.
So it takes a lot to rupture it.
To completely rupture a healthy adult stomach requires high-velocity, localized impact, the kind of force typically seen when a driver is thrown against a steering wheel in a high-speed collision or a violent strike from a baseball bat.
And the consequence of that rupture is what makes this so incredibly dark.
It's awful.
The official cause of death was ruled as sepsis, stemming from the abdominal perforation. For those listening, sepsis is not an instant death like a gunshot wound.
Not a.
When a stomach ruptures, highly acidic gastric juices and bacteria spill directly into the sterile peritoneal cavity of the abdomen.
It causes a condition called peritonitis, which triggers a massive systemic inflammatory response. That's sepsis.
That's a slow burn.
The biological reality of this injury is prolonged agony. It means Blair was beaten, his stomach was ruptured, his clothes were stripped and searched, and then he was left alone in the dark.
To slowly succumb to a systemic infection.
Suffering from intense pain and a spiking fever over the course of several hours.
Alone on a construction site. It's just devastating. And there was one final piece of physical evidence clenched in his hand. A single strand of long hair.
According to Locard's exchange principle, that should be the golden ticket.
Explain Locard's principle for us.
It's the forensic theory that every contact leaves a trace, the bedrock of crime scene investigation. The perpetrator takes something from the scene and leaves something behind. That hair was the only piece of potential foreign DNA recovered from the immediate vicinity. But sadly, in 1996, and even in subsequent testing, it hasn't yielded a match that could identify the killer.
So we have an incredibly brutal, agonizingly slow death. A staged crime scene that suggests a methodical search. A vast sum of money left behind. When the physical evidence is this contradictory, it creates an investigative vacuum.
And true crime internet communities rush in to fill that void.
Oh, absolutely. The public fascination with this case is immense.
It truly is. This mystery has a massive cultural footprint. It was featured on the original Unsolved Mysteries broadcast in 1997.
That's a classic.
It's been dissected by major podcasters, and massive international YouTubers have analyzed every single frame of the hotel footage.
The internet obsesses over it because it represents like a glitch in the matrix.
A scenario where the rules of reality seem to suspend themselves.
Exactly. So let's look at the primary theories these communities debate and kind of elevate the discussion beyond the basics.
Okay, let's do it.
The most straightforward interpretation of the timeline is the real pursuer theory, taking Blair completely at his word. He said someone was trying to kill him, and he was, in fact, killed.
Proponents of this theory argue that Blair was involved in a high-stakes conflict back in Canada.
Maybe related to his past.
Perhaps it involved his prior history with narcotics. Or perhaps he witnessed illicit financial dealings or organized crime activity on a construction site.
Construction can be a shady business sometimes.
It can. They point to the liquidation of his assets into untraceable gold and his frantic border hops as proof of a rational man responding to a highly capable physical threat.
So they think someone was literally on his tail the whole time.
The theory asserts that a professional tracker followed him 2,600 miles across the continent to silence him.
I understand why that narrative is compelling. But if we look at the logistics of criminal behavior, I have to push back hard against this.
The logistics are tough.
Think about the mechanics of tailing someone in 1996. There are no ubiquitous cell phones pinging cell towers. There are no GPS trackers you can easily slip onto a bumper.
It was analog tracking.
Right. Tracking a target who is randomly abandoning cars, swapping international flights for domestic ones, and driving hundreds of miles without a planned destination. That would require a massive, highly coordinated team.
The logistics are indeed highly improbable for a single pursuer. To maintain surveillance across multiple airports and rental car agencies without losing the target or being noticed is nearly impossible.
Exactly. And to bring on that, look at the victimology in the murder weapon. A cartel hitman or a professional assassin does not engage in a chaotic hand-to-hand brawl in a construction site.
They don't.
They don't strike a victim in the stomach with a piece of scrap metal and leave them to die of an infection hours later. A professional execution is designed to be swift, final, and low risk.
They use a firearm.
They shoot you and leave. The sheer brutality and inefficiency of Blair's murder screams that the altercation was disorganized and spontaneous, not a calculated hit.
Which logically leads us to the second major framework analyzed by armchair detectives, the mental health and paranoia theory.
Let's dig into this one.
Extensive discussions on platforms like Reddit delve into the psychology of late-onset schizophrenia or maybe a substance-induced psychotic break.
The core argument here is that the pursuer did not exist in the physical world at all.
Right. The killer was entirely a projection of Blair's fracturing mind.
Let me pitch an analogy for how this might have functioned. His paranoia acted like a severe autoimmune disease.
Okay, I like this.
Just as an overactive immune system attacks the very body it is biologically designed to protect, Blair's hypervigilance, which was a psychological defense mechanism trying to keep him safe from a perceived threat, is the exact mechanism that destroyed his life.
That is a clinically sound metaphor.
It drove him to abandon his support system, drain his resources, isolate himself in a foreign city, and place himself in immense physical danger.
And the incident at the gas station with the Nissan key is the undeniable proof of this internal collapse.
It really is.
Refusing to check your pockets because your reality cannot accommodate being wrong is a hallmark of a delusion.
So his brain was basically tricking him into a corner.
Many analysts suggest that Blair's erratic behavior, driven by this internal nightmare, simply placed him in the wrong environment at the wrong time.
Which naturally brings up the interrupted robbery theory.
Right.
The idea is that he is wandering around a dark construction site near a major interstate highway, heavily agitated, maybe visibly holding cash or acting strangely.
Drawing attention to himself.
Yeah. A local transient or an opportunistic criminal spots him, initiates a mugging, strikes him with a heavy object, and then gets spooked and flees before taking the money.
The Knox County investigators absolutely explored this angle. It is standard operating procedure to look at robbery. However, the true crime community and behavioral profilers heavily discount the interrupted robbery theory. And the crime scene staging tells us exactly why.
Right. If we look at the risk versus reward matrix of a mugger, a disorganized offender operating in a dark parking lot is fighting a ticking clock.
Adrenaline is high. The goal is to secure the valuables and escape before being detected.
Exactly. If you incapacitate your victim with a blow to the abdomen, you do not then take the time to unbuckle his pants, pull them off, untie his shoes, remove them, pull off his socks, and then deliberately turn those socks inside out.
It violates the psychology of a hasty retreat.
Completely.
The inverted socks and the ripped open shirt indicate a hyper-focused search for a specific item. If the attacker was merely interrupted, they would have at least grabbed the $4,000 scattered across the dirt.
Or snatch the fanny pack. It was right there.
Right. Leaving the primary score behind while meticulously searching the footwear suggests the attacker was looking for something vastly more important to them than cash.
And what could be more important than cash to someone attacking a stranger in the middle of the night? This brings us to the unknown acquaintance, or the secret rendezvous theory. This posits that Blair wasn't just running away from a threat in Canada. He was running toward a specific interaction in Knoxville.
There is a dark logic to this. Did Blair arrange a meeting to purchase something illicit, perhaps drugs, or maybe to pay off someone he believed was threatening him?
If he was meeting someone dangerous, the ribbed shirt and the inverted socks take on a totally new context.
They really do. Was the attacker checking to see if Blair was wearing a police wire?
Oh, wow.
Were they searching for a specific document, a tape, or a secondary stash of drugs he might have hidden in his shoe?
That would explain the inside-out socks perfectly.
It would. And to explore every angle impartially, we also have to address the local social context of Knoxville in 1996.
Right.
There have been persistent rumors and theories discussed on forums regarding Blair's potential bisexuality.
Okay, I've seen those.
Some speculate that, driven by a manic state, he may have sought out a clandestine romantic or sexual encounter.
And the social climate of the mid-90s, particularly in areas near interstate truck stops or industrial sites, often forced such encounters into the shadows.
Yes, unfortunately. If Blair engaged in a clandestine meeting that rapidly turned predatory, it could explain the intimate physical nature of the attack, the removal of the pants, and the extreme violence that followed.
That makes a chilling amount of sense.
The attacker may have panicked upon realizing how severely they had injured him. Or perhaps they were acting out of severe prejudice, making it a hate crime rather than a robbery.
This theory actually gains a terrifying amount of traction when we look at the police sketches.
The tracker barrel sketch.
Yes. During that missing 12-hour window, two separate female witnesses reported seeing a man matching Blair's exact description standing outside a nearby Cracker Barrel restaurant, engaged in conversation with an unidentified male.
The Knox County Sheriff's Department considered this credible enough to release a composite sketch of the unknown man to the public.
If Blair was indeed conversing with someone in the hours before his death, it shatters the assumption that he was entirely isolated.
It does. Whether this man was a drug dealer, a potential hookup, or someone just trying to exploit a clearly distressed tourist, his existence provides a physical bridge between Blair's paranoia and the very real violence of the crime scene.
So as we transition into analyzing the macro view of this tragedy, how do we possibly reconcile these two incredibly extreme realities?
It's the ultimate challenge of this case.
On one hand, we have the tangible, undeniable blood on the gravel, the forensic reality of a ruptured stomach, and the staged clothing. On the other hand, we have a trail of invisible paranoia stretching thousands of miles back to British Columbia.
I believe the synthesis requires us to accept that both realities can be true simultaneously.
How so?
Well, the psychological evidence of his flight from Canada is undeniable. The forensic evidence of a random, non-robbery altercation in Tennessee is equally undeniable. The challenge lies in reconstructing his intent during that missing black hole of time.
The 12 hours between walking away from his $50 at the hotel and the discovery of his body.
Yes, the missing time is the key. Because his baseline logic was already fractured, trying to apply rational motives to his movements that night is almost impossible.
Did he wander onto the construction site to sleep rough because he thought the hotel was compromised?
Maybe.
Did he experience a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing?
Now, that is a critical physiological concept to introduce here.
Could you explain that?
Paradoxical undressing typically occurs in the final stages of hypothermia. The hypothalamus in the brain malfunctions and causes the victim to feel a burning sensation, leading them to strip off their clothes in freezing temperatures.
But it wasn't freezing in Tennessee in July.
Right, but extreme physical shock, rapid blood loss from internal injuries like a ruptured stomach, or severe psychotic delirium can trigger similar neurological misfires.
Oh, wow. So it is entirely possible that Blair, either suffering from a total psychological break or the agonizing early stages of sepsis after being struck, removed his own pants and shoes in a state of delirium.
It is clinically possible.
But that still doesn't fully explain the inside-out socks. That just feels so deliberate.
Which brings us back to the most terrifying and tragic synthesis of all the evidence.
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Let's really look at the horror of that concept. Imagine Blair is suffering a massive mental health crisis. His mind has conjured an army of assassins. He runs to a city he doesn't know.
It is the middle of the night. He is exhausted, his adrenaline is depleted, and he is terrified.
He wanders out of the hotel and onto a dark, deserted construction site. Perhaps he begins frantically searching his own clothing for tracking devices he is hallucinating or planted on him.
Which would perfectly explain the inverted socks.
Right, and in this highly agitated, erratic state, he accidentally startles a violent local transient or maybe interrupts individuals engaging in illicit activity on the site.
His hypervigilance provokes the exact response it was trying to avoid.
So tragic.
He acts aggressively out of fear, and the individuals respond with lethal force. They strike him with a crowbar, rupture his stomach, and perhaps begin to search him.
Just to see who they're dealing with.
But as they do, they realize they aren't dealing with a typical victim. They are dealing with someone who is screaming about invisible killers, someone who is deeply, deeply unwell.
So the attackers panic.
They realize the severity of the blow they just delivered and flee the scene, entirely ignoring the fanny pack and the cash in their rush to escape a chaotic, unpredictable situation.
It is a profound tragedy. But running so fiercely from a fake killer constructed by his own mind, his erratic behavior acted as a magnet,
drawing him directly into the path of a real monster.
It respects the physical evidence of a brutal, disorganized altercation while fully accounting for the psychological breakdown that transported him across the continent.
It is the most analytically sound theory, but it remains deeply unsettling.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that speaks to the sociology of why true crime communities obsess over cases with invisible or incomplete motives.
Right.
Human beings are pattern-seeking creatures. We rely on cause and effect to feel safe in the world.
We want things to make sense.
We can reluctantly process a robbery gone wrong because financial desperation is a motive we understand. We can even conceptualize targeted cartel violence or revenge because there is a dark, brutal logic to those actions.
There's a transaction, an eye for an eye or money for a life.
Exactly. But when we examine Blair Adams, we are confronted with the terrifying prospect of a void.
A total void.
A horrific, targeted-style killing inflicted upon a deeply paranoid man where the motive is completely invisible shatters our fundamental assumption that the world operates on logic.
It implies that chaos is always present.
It forces us to acknowledge that sometimes there is no grand conspiracy, there's no calculated plot. Sometimes the universe simply aligns in the most terrifying, coincidental way imaginable.
A man's internal psychological nightmare bleeds out into the physical world.
And the two collide in the dark on a pile of construction dirt in Tennessee.
It really is like looking into a void. It strips away the comfort of a narrative resolution and leaves you with the raw reality of bad luck and broken minds.
It's incredibly heavy.
It is. And as we conclude our exploration today, I want you, the listener, to let that reality sit with you. Review the timeline in your mind. Think about the heavy gold in his pack, the cross-country flights, the bizarre refusal of the car key, and the sheer suffocating terror Blair experienced in his final days.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And ask yourself, was the true killer a physical entity? A person who methodically tracked Blair Adams across international borders, waiting for the perfect, isolated moment to strike? Or was the true killer the invisible fear itself, a contagion of the mind so powerful that it drove a healthy man out of his safe life, forced him into the dark, and practically summoned the violence that ended him?
It's a question that might never be answered.
Next time, we examine the disappearance of Patrice Andres, a case involving a salon, a vanished mother, and a husband whose behavior drew years of attention.